that there, Carla, for a minute. And I want to back up and I want to ask you about how you got started in
Mm.
fitness and nutrition.
Okay, so my story started, well, way back. Actually, I was in grade four. I think that's
Hmm.
standard six. I weighed 90 kgs, and so very much overweight for my size. Um, we didn't necessarily have the funding to get to go to the gym and buy the supplementation, all that. So it was kind of just you needed to do something. So I looked at the most cost effective way, and that's obviously putting the shoes on and doing the running work. So I dropped a lot of weight during that period, and that got me excited about fitness. But I left it again. It didn't really resonate with me. It wasn't something that I was planning to do for the rest of my life. Little did I know, I literally stumbled on my purpose back then. But it was at a later age, at the age of 16 years old, where the same financial reason that we couldn't have like both food, medication, all that set up, done and dusted in the household. And my mom at the time, sorry, just fixing the earphone. My mom at the time, she had a couple of illnesses. Now, with one of them most mentioned, the most relevant, well, the most, um, what is the word I'm looking for? The most obvious one. Okay, well, the most usual illness would
Mhm.
be type 2 diabetes. And she had asthma, and the whole anatomy started to just go a little bit backwards. And it was at that time where, again, we needed to make the decision of, okay, what is it going to be? It can't be like this year in, year out. I can literally see my mom, the image I had of her in my head about this healthy woman turning into something that we don't recognize anymore. And the bad thing about the female aspect of her, she didn't recognize herself anymore. And that's not nice. Definitely not nice to see any family members struggle with that kind of illness. So what I ended up doing is going to the baseline of the most cost effective way to get your health back, and that is food. So I literally went up and did a couple of studies on food based medicine that could be used with the specific illnesses and diseases. And I wrote up a phase for my mom, and I said, listen, you've tried medication, you went back and forth, and the struggle is still here, you're not getting better. So let's do this. Let's do this phase and see where it goes from here. I mean, there's no side effects to the food at the end of the day. So she tried it, and within 3 months period, she was off of most of her medication. She dropped 8 kgs. She was back in action. She went back to put on to putting on makeup, wearing nice dresses. The confidence flared. I mean, she went
Mhm.
out. All that the female part, the beauty part of it, developed again, and that's where I got my mom back. And that at that moment, that is when I decided, well, if this is the case, it can do for one individual, which is close to me, close to home, and my family. Why not everybody? If it was so cost effective and so easy at the end of the day, where does the will or that loss of I really need this? That individual just needs to take the responsibility to do it at the end of the day. That's the most important part. But why not everybody? And that is where I started to go into food more and deeper and deeper and deeper. And it ended where it is today, into plenitude, where we all about energy and the holisticness of your cognitive function, your gut brain connection, overall energy production in your anatomy, and going back to the basic formation, which is your food at the end of the day.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, wow.
Thank
And
you.
now I'm
Yeah.
like, I have to look at my fridge, what I'm eating now.
Duly so. You're on live now. Grab the camera, go to the fridge. We'll go through
Well, little by little, like we'll just figure out everything that needs to go. So, Nelson, that's funny. Nelson says quarantine dating. What did I miss, honey? You're gonna have to watch the replay.
it.
Maybe we'll bring it up again at the end, but you missed some good stuff there. And hello, Angeline. And so let me jump to this question that Carla has.
Yes.
She wanted to know, since we're talking about lockdown and quarantine, how it impacted your fitness and well-being and health routines.
So yeah, I think the first base was now not being able to go to the gym. It was, all right, what's the next obvious step? That would be you've got a physical body. Your body is heavy as well. So the obvious step to do is home workouts using your own body. So that changed the regime quite a bit. And that's something my patients actually adapted to very well. But yet again, it's a bigger responsibility. It's easy to sit in a room of quarantine and be miserable, be depressed, be, oh, woe me, that kind of lifestyle that you'll eventually get back into habit. But you don't realize with every passing day, you lose a bit of that sustainability at the end of the day. And it's so difficult to get back in once you're out. So what I found with most of the individuals, we tend to celebrate and appreciate bad behavior. I always say this, that people choose suffering because it's the only time they're being heard. So when it comes to actually looking at your health, it's put on the sideline when at the worst possible time when there's a pandemic currently going on. So people would try to eat more regarding their emotions, junk food based, fast foods, sleeping in, sleeping later because champagne.
Wait, that's bad.
You were ticking all the boxes. Yes, that's me. So I'm on par, I guess. So it's been a struggle with, I would say, some individuals, but other individuals that I do see has changed dramatically during this quarantine. And I usually say this as well. During the COVID pandemic, where everybody was forced to stay inside, they were forced to go inside to self-reflect and really start to work on the issues that they can't put aside anymore because work life is keeping me so busy and I've got all these priorities, I can't focus on myself. Now, when the only place you can start with actual healing is by yourself, you need to sit and actually start working on these small habitual changes. So lockdown was good in a sense of the holisticness where people start to appreciate. I mean, there's this whole movement, well, not a movement, it's been here for forever, but people are starting to realize that they are much more than just the physical body, which is phenomenal. Yeah. But on the same note, there's a lot of individuals that choose suffering. They choose the negative part of this. They like to stick to that connection because it's gossip. It's negative. It grabs your attention. Us as human beings, we are made for survival. So whenever we get a line of news that is negative, we focus on that because our natural brain instinct says you should be cautious of this to survive. But we get so focused on everything that's going on around us that we forget to make a living. And then at the end of the day, we are even scared to get out of bed. And then it's linked to depression. So where do you start? I would rather say just put everything aside for 1 second. Just first check in with yourself. How are you actually feeling? Recognize the emotions that you're feeling. And if you don't like the way you're feeling, the good thing is a change of life is only a decision away. And that starts with the information you put in here and then the information you put in your tummy, because your gut at the end of the day is just the second brain.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's powerful information. You said so much good stuff right there. I mean, like, I don't know where to begin. So, okay, let me back up. Okay, so cool. You are a strength coach, right? And yes. So you teach people all the time how to build their strength and to become healthier, because you're also a nutritionist, right?
Yes.
So while we were in quarantine,
yes,
and we were all suffering, all of us. I like to say, back in the day, you would hear me say, if you watched previous episodes of Hot Topics, when the pandemic started, that we were all going through a collective trauma. Now, my regulars, my tribe will remember me saying that, and that we were all going to be processing it in our own ways. Now, one of the ways that you mentioned would probably be eating junk food and not exercising and sleeping late and sort of just, getting out of a normal routine of self-care. Okay. And so I guess my question is, what should have happened? Like if we were in a situation to where we were in an extended lockdown again, or we were just at a tough moment in our life, how can we avoid choosing to suffer? Because it's a choice ultimately
Yes.
that we make, to lean into what's going on and allow it to shift our energy into that vibration, right? So what would be the points you would make about that? Like how could we be choose better, I guess, is my point.
So I always say this to the parents when I see them during consultations, and I give them the guidance on what they should do, and then they end up asking me, what should my children eat, because they're not going to eat like this. And then I go back to this. If we look at food at the end of the day, we are all always conscious of the price we pay for the food. But let's take the price out of the scenario for this example. And if I were to say this bag of something can add 7 weeks to your life, and this bag of something would take off 7 months of your life, it would be irrelevant to what this bag cost, the 7 weeks adding. You would pay an arm and a leg when your time is almost at an end. Now, when it comes to choices in your life, when it comes to that last moment, when we reflect back on our life, that is everything we have, the house, the clothes, the time you spent with your family, everything that you accomplished. It is a reflection of how you invested your time at the end of the day. And when it comes to that last moments, the only thing that you actually wish you had more was more time. Nobody wishes for another Monday where they could just work so much harder. No, the occupation, the degrees, the titles, the money in the bank, everything, it's relevant at that mere seconds. But if you had more time, now when it comes to us as human beings, we neglect that. Well, we've got this illusion that we have a link of immortality towards us. When something happens to an individual, we would say, oh, that's so bad. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. But we do not understand the necessity that we need to address our own life so that it doesn't happen. We are not separated from harshness. We are not separated from adversity. It's just a matter of time when something will happen to you. Not to basically boost fear, but we shouldn't be dumb enough, I would say ignorant enough to think that it won't happen. So when we perceive time to be infinitum, it's not, but we don't necessarily know that this conversation we're having at the moment would be our last conversation. But when I say it, all of a sudden there's more value to this conversation. You think about, what if this is the last time I see you? Then all of a sudden you don't want this session to end. Now, when it comes to families and friends and memories and building upon that entire scenario is based around time and how you invest your time at the end of the day. So when somebody is going through adversity, us as humans are taught that when something bad happens in life, we can only give something an appreciation to basically show that person that we love him and it's going to be okay. But again, go back to the scenario of what can I give you of utmost value that can add towards your life? That is time. But I can only give that when I give you health. There's this one guy always said, when introducing a new partnership or going into a relationship, the first thing you should say to your significant other is, I will take care of me for you as long as you take care of yourself for me. And you are not responsible for my happiness at the end of the day whatsoever. Nothing that you can do would dictate my happiness at the end of the day. So you take responsibility for your own happiness and you take responsibility for your own health. That is how you can control your optimal state. Now, look at the state of the pandemic that is happening at the moment. Everybody is now all of a sudden dumbstruck with the actual viewpoint of where they